Well, I started. That was under my time with Sam Allardyce. Sam was the manager. I was the assistant manager, and Sam used to always want to be. He wanted to be in the stand. He wanted to see the game from above, which I witnessed last night. Actually, I was on the big gantry where the TV crews are, and I watched the game last night. It's a great view, and Sam said to me, "I want to go in the stands in the first half, and then second half I'll come down pitch side. So we need to be connected." So it started initially. It's a funny story actually. It started initially at the Reebok Stadium, which was the home of Bolton Wanderers, and we had 4 people connected to the headpiece. So it was Sam, obviously first and foremost, assistant manager, the head physio, and the analysis guy. Now we were all connected together, but everybody. Sam was always first to speak. I would always reply, and if it was a medical problem, the medical guys would have jurisdiction over the airwaves, and the analysis guy just used to listen. And if there was any kind of criticism, as in what he was witnessing on the TV screens, he would say that was offside, Sam, or that wasn't offside, Sam, or And so he'd give him feedback for information for the media straight away after the game. Where the media might be asking a question about what about that goal that you scored and was this allowed and all of these things. So I carried that on to Hull City, but I always liked being pitch side. So my assistant manager at that time was a man called Brian Horton, who had managed Hull before, but he liked to be in the stand. He liked to sit in the director's box and watch the game from above to see if there's any tactical changes that he could advise me with. And it stuck. All of a sudden, I've got instead of Maradona, I got Madonna. These stigmas, they stuck to me because I didn't defend myself. I just thought it was fun. I didn't really bother with arguing about why I was wearing it, why you wear them headphones, why am I wearing these headphones. That's the only way we can communicate now. And in them days, that was the only way I could communicate.
The VAR Show. The one place for your weekly football update.
Hello, a very warm welcome to the VAR Show, the show which talks about various major football leagues in detail. Today, we are going to connect with interviews and via Mr. Phil Brown, who has managed the likes of Hull City, Preston Norton, Hyderabad FC in the ISL, among a host of other teams. So, without wasting much time, I would like to first thank Phil for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what are you doing these days?
I'm great. Thank you very much for the invite. I look forward to the interview. Doing a bit of work for the ISL this season, whereby they've invited me to do Star Sports in conjunction with IMG. And it's all about match analysis. It's all about commentary. It's all about expert analysis and talking about we think the teams will do this season. Probably similar to the interview today, but I've not decided to hang my boots up with regards to coaching by any stretch of the imagination. I think I did recently. I did a AIFF conference, the Zoom conference call because of the pandemic, and really enjoyed it. Maybe moving into that side of the game, where education for younger coaches, education for younger managers, and maybe pass a little bit of my experience on to them. I always said when I first came to India, I wanted to manage abroad, and the experience I had in India, regardless of how it happened, I think the first team that I sampled was Pune City, and I had a great experience there. And then the franchise was sold to Hyderabad, and the experience wasn't as good last year. But I always feel as if there's unfinished business in India. I think there's plenty of scope for improvement, for sure. Whether it be for managers, coaches, or players. I think the game is definitely moving in the right direction. And I think this year's ISL will be a fantastic season. I think it's a really exciting season. You know, the fact that Manchester City have now hooked up with Mumbai, you know, and all the big players are still in place. I'm talking about Bangalore and Goa, ATK, Moen Bagan, the big players are coming in from the ISL and the IL and merging, and it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing Robbie Fowler at SC East Bengal. So I think it'll be a fantastic season this.
Definitely. And like how you said, like you're doing media work this season for ISL, and like you said, like how you are there to do the analysis. Do you think that is something that is very important these days in terms of the package that you provide the supporters when they're watching from maybe TV?
I think so. I've always been a reactive personality in terms of the media because I've always been a player, or then a coach, and then a manager. And when anybody puts a camera in your face and a microphone up your nose, I tend to talk from that perspective. Nowadays, certainly this season, I'm seeing the media work from a different perspective. I think the production team, I didn't realize how hard they work. I didn't realize how big the whole process was. Some of these guys are working 12, 14 hours a day just to make sure that the Hero ISL is the right package worldwide. And now I'm part of that package, and I want to get the right message across to everybody that I believe that India is moving in the right direction from a football perspective. And I'm really looking forward to analysing how the coaches are working with the new group of players, certainly at the start, and also the effect of the pandemic. I think it's been really interesting listening to the comments out of some of the camps that have had maybe 2 or 3 pre-season friendlies, and the preparation has been very disjointed because of quarantine rules and pandemic rules and players travelling, and all of these things are coming into the coach's psyche and his manual of really how to handle a group of players. So I don't think the first few games will tell a true story of the ISL this season, but I think the end will be a massive excitement. The fact that the ISL have now have places available for the Asian Champions League. It's a fantastic prospect to aim for, and I think the ambitious coaches that we have in place now and the ambitious owners will see a better product.
Definitely. And you mentioned how this is probably the first stint maybe in media, like full stream, compared to before where you're involved in maybe the producing what the media writes or talks about. And what is what's the biggest change or some insight that you noticed probably moving in from maybe being involved in what is being talked about to maybe talking about what is happening?
Yeah, that in itself, it shows that mentality, that shift, that change to asking a question as opposed to answering a question. There's one key factor for the game, analysing how I think the game is going to pan out, and not planning for that. I'm actually analysing how two sides go toe-to-toe with each other, how two coaches and two maybe systems, two of individuals are going to go toe-to-toe, and the strengths and weaknesses of them two teams, as opposed to knowing my strengths and weaknesses and keeping that to me and in-house from the game perspective. And then there's always a result, and there's always a reaction to that result. Whereas when I'm analysing a game, I'm looking at maybe what the coach has done wrong. He's maybe had a fault or made a wrong decision with regards to a team selection or a substitution or a system maybe, or a tactic. As we witnessed in the first game last night, I thought the surprise package in the first game was the... Subhashish, are you still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the surprise package, what I witnessed watching the game, was how much control Kerala Blasters had over the game. And we heard stories before the match about ATK Moen Bagan, how Habas normally prepares his team. He hasn't done any pre-season friendlies. And you think, well, this could be a shock to the system. But his management skills, and what I mean by management, I don't mean man management, I mean his game management skills, I thought won the game last night. He didn't get panicky, the fact that Kerala Blasters had all the ball, I think it was 63% possession. Was he expecting that? I don't know. He's used to playing counter-attacking football. As I've said many a time, he reminds me of a boxer who is a back foot boxer that waits for the punch, and then when the punch comes, he counters. And I think that's the way he sets his teams up. Well, if you have possession, your team is going to be attacking. Your team is going to be playing that way. And he has goals in his team, which obviously the goal scorer last night, who was a fantastic addition to the Hero ISL, for the last couple of years. And he gets good strikers are the ones that score once in a 1-0 victory, not the ones that score 3 times in a 5-3 victory. The ones that are real goal scorers are the ones that get the points on board. And Chris is one of them, without a shadow of a doubt. So as I go back to it, the initial game plan of Kerala Blast is to control the game, control the ball. And they had 2 Spanish midfield players who did exactly that. I think when they get used to Hooper, Kerala, when they get used to, what I mean by that, get used to him, he's a new addition to the squad. When they get used to his movement, when they get used to his cleverness, and I think his movement is very, very good, and you get players in advanced positions that see this movement and play the pass, I think they will score goals for sure. But last night it looked a little bit disjointed. You had maybe 5 or 6 players really happy keeping the ball in their own half, and you had 2 or 3 players who wanted the ball forward a little bit quick. And ATK, Mohan Bagan were happy with that. They were quite happy to wait, and Habas played a trump card, bringing Mandi on, and they go and win the game. So tactically, I'd like to have analysed the game, because that's exactly what I would have been seeing. But I have another game tonight what I've got to concentrate on, which is a young coach, Jared Noose at North East, who's 35. There may be 1 or 2 players on the pitch that are older than him. This is the interesting part, But where you get youth, you get energy, and he will provide an energy for his team. And it'll be interesting because, everybody talks about Man City, Mumbai City now is attracted all the big name players, and they're going to take some stopping this year, but they might get a little shock in the first, bringing new norms about, and it might be a new norm. The shock in the system, and it might come tonight. But I'm looking forward to see how Mumbai play, because I like Okbechi. I love Lafondra. I think he's an absolute gem, great goal scorer. And you have players who have played here before, how he fits into a new regime, So there's lots of things to look forward to. But what I get excited about, what the difference, the massive difference with me now, is that all the pressure is now on the coaches. All the pressure is now on the players. Somebody puts a microphone in my mouth and asks me to answer a question. I don't have a problem with that.
Definitely. So I'll take your mind away from maybe ISL for now, and maybe go back. You said, when you were a player, did you always envision being a coach, or was it something like you wanted to keep in touch with the game, so you continued in coaching?
I like the question, because I never really thought about coaching until I was 34 year old, and it came from a conversation I had with my manager at the time, who was a guy, a Scottish hard central midfield player, played for Aston Villa, made his name at Aston Villa, called Bruce Rioch, who eventually, after he finished at Bolton with us guys, he went to Arsenal. Didn't really have a great success story at Arsenal, but he was good. He was very, very good at what he always thought about the game. He always thought about the future, how it looked. And I sat down with him one day, and I was sort of, I had my own businesses away from football. I had an electrical business. I served my time as an electrical apprentice, and in electrical engineering. And I started my own firm, my own business. And then during the course of my career as a player, albeit I had a long and fairly successful career, I didn't retire until 38. But when I was retiring, I was always thinking about what I would be doing after retirement. I had a restaurant. I had a bar, I had a nightclub, I had this electrical business. So I had things going on in my life outside of football. And then Bruce Rioch sat me down and he said, you've been a captain of every changing room since 15, 16 years of being a captain. And that's in itself, that's a leader. That's an example setter. That's a talker. Leads by example on and off. Doing your coaching badges. Just start doing the A, the B, the C licenses, and then see where it takes you. Because you can't. He was saying to me, you can't give all that experience that you've gleaned from the world of football. You can't give all that up. So I took his advice, and I started coaching. I started really enjoying it. And eventually had an opportunity to go straight away from being a player to being a player coach at Blackpool with Sam Allardyce. Therein formed a great relationship with Sam. Had 2 years at Blackpool with him. I then went to Bolton, had a couple of years at Bolton with Colin Todd. But then Sam got the job at Bolton and we had 5-6 years of absolute fantastic success that got promoted from the Championship, survived in the Premier League and ended up in Europe. So that started me off down the pathway of coaching. But if it wasn't for that initial conversation with Bruce Rioch, I probably would have been lost to the game and maybe, I don't know, maybe just the odd occasion doing a request for being a reporter or being an expert or whatever. But that was the pathway we eventually chose, and the rest is history. I stayed in the game. I've been in the game now for nearly 42 years.
Definitely, but you have been in the game. Sorry to cut you out. You have been in the game for quite a while, like you said, 42 years. But the only one I associate you whenever I see your name or is the time when you're at Hull City. You're like, that was an amazing team. Like, I wanted to ask you. I always had this doubt. I spoke to one of your former players, and he gave me the reason, but I wanted to hear it from you. You used to wear the microphone while on the pitch. What was the reason for that? Because I never saw anyone else doing it.
Well, I started. That was under my time with Sam Allardyce. Sam was the manager. I was the assistant manager, and Sam used to always want to play. He wanted to be in the stand. He wanted to see the game from above, which I witnessed last night. Actually, I was on the big gantry where the TV crews are, and I watched the game last night. It's a great view, and Sam said to me, "I want to go in the stands in the first half, and then second half I'll come down pitch side. So we need to be connected." So it started initially. It's a funny story, actually. It started initially at the Reebok Stadium, which was the home of Bolton Wanderers, and we had 4 people connected to the headpiece. So it was Sam, obviously first and foremost, assistant manager, the head physio, and the analysis guy. Now we were all connected together, but Sam was always first to speak. I would always reply, and if it was a medical problem, the medical guys would have jurisdiction over the airwaves, and the analysis guy just used to listen, and if there was any kind of criticism, as in what he was witnessing on the TV screens, he would say, "That was offside, Sam," or "That wasn't offside, Sam," or and so he'd give him feedback for information for the media straight away after the game. Where the media might be asking a question about what about that goal that you scored and was this allowed and all of these things. So I carried that on to Hull City, but I always liked being pitch side. So my assistant manager at that time was a man called Brian Horton, who had managed Hull before, but he liked to be in the stand. He liked to sit in the director's box and watch the game from above to see if there's any tactical changes that he could advise me with. And it stuck. All of a sudden, I've got instead of Maradona, I got Madonna. These stigmas, they stuck to me because I didn't defend myself. I just thought it was fun. I didn't really bother with arguing about why I was wearing it, why you wearing them headphones, why am I wearing these headphones. That's the only way we can communicate now, and in them days that was the only way I could communicate.
No, because you generally don't see, I think, like, I didn't see Sam Allardyce doing it, maybe because it was before my time, maybe, but I saw you, and and that stuck on, because I never, like, at least I didn't encounter anyone else doing that. So it's like, okay, why did he do that? Was there some reason or something that I wanted to ask you first, and what was the reason for that? And staying with her, like, you all performed extremely well. I think you had Giovanni there who was doing extremely well that season.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, like, generally when you get promoted from the maybe the championship to the Premier League, you see teams doing extremely well the first season and they kind of fade away in the successive seasons, where probably some of them unfortunately even get relegated. Why do you think like that happens?
Well, I'm very fortunate in as much that I've been promoted from the Championship on 3 occasions. Once as a coach with Colin Todd, once as an assistant manager with Sam Allardyce, and then as a manager myself at Hull City. And each time it was different reasons, you know. What I mean by different reasons, we played some wonderful football at Bolton Wanderers under Colin Todd. And we won the championship by a long way. We won the championship with 90, I think we had 98, 99 points. And because of that, Colin's belief was pure football. It was nothing else. You know, he wasn't interested in how the club was run outside of the game. He wasn't involved with most things, you know, from a business perspective. But on the training ground every day, the coach, he demanded a standard of play. He demanded a standard of possession. A standard of passing. There was a certain way to play, and bearing in mind, you know, Colin had played under the likes of Brian Clough and people like that, and been an England international, so he knew what a quality player looked like. So his recruitment was very good. But we got relegated, so we got promoted, and then we got relegated straight away. And reason being, we stayed with Championship players, and that was the reason. We didn't really strengthen and bring in a whole host of Premier League players. We stayed sort of top-end Championship players, and we got relegated. And then Sam Allardyce came in. The difference between Sam and Colin was Sam had a big picture. Sam had this picture of how the whole club should be run, you know, from a business perspective, from a sports science perspective, from a educational perspective, from a medical, you know, everything as well as football he was involved with. And consequently, when we missed out the first year, but then we got promoted the second year through the playoffs, we had a system in place that would probably blow the minds of a lot of in football at that time. And what I mean by that is Sam had this idea about taking players on a year loan, paying a percentage of their wages, and then only buying them if it was a success. So it was a win-win situation for us. But he was the first one to do that kind of thing. It's happening all the time now, but he was the first one to do that. And to bring players in like JJ Okocha from PSG, as an example, I, as a coach, as a young assistant manager, I'm looking at JJ Okocha on the training ground every day and thanking the blessings. What am I doing working with this guy? He was world class. He was brilliant at what he did. And yet we had him at Bolton Wanderers, who was a team that everybody's favourites for finishing bottom that year. And but Sam had a business plan. So he had a bigger picture plan. And that's not being disrespectful to Colin. Colin was purely football. He's a football man, but Sam was a businessman. And then when I got promoted myself, I had a bit of both. I tried to do the JJ Okocha thing with Giovanni, who you've mentioned. And then when you're moving things forward, you can't just jump to the bigger picture. You have to move things forward gradually. And that takes time, but that also takes you're going to get relegated. When you've survived that first year, you've got another 60, 70 million pound to invest in the football club. So we were talking about new training ground. We were trying to move the club forward as a whole, instead of just as a game of football. And we did. We survived. And then second season, unfortunately, I was relieved of my duties, and the club went back down into the Championship. So to put it in a nutshell, I've got 3 different types of experience of getting promoted from the Championship to the Premier League. But it's a tough gig, it's some great examples of how a club should be running. I would look at something like Burnley under Sean Dyche. It's a fantastic example. The biggest period under Sean Dyche, but they stay with him because he's got a bigger picture. He's got a game plan with regards to the business. And now Burnley are, okay, they're struggling. Are you still there? Yeah. So they're struggling this season, but, you know, because of the overall picture of the football club, because of the overall support mechanism of Burnley Football Club, I think they'll get out of the trouble and stay in the Premier League and be long established. But then there's examples of, say, Sheffield United. Sheffield United get promoted to the Premier League on great football, on fantastic football. And then they bring this brilliant football to the Premier League and surprise everybody. That's what we did. We surprised everybody. In them first 10 games, I think it was 9 games in the Premier League, I had 6 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat. And we went to places like Spurs and Newcastle, West Bromwich Albion, Arsenal, and won games at these places, you know. And I don't think anybody actually respected us. I don't think anybody paid any attention. Hull City, everybody's favourite for going down. You know, it'll be an easy game. And we surprised everybody, you know. We had a way of playing, and we had a system, and we had a little gem in Giovanni that would score goals, you know. So it was a recipe for survival.
Definitely. And, you know, like, at least for the new viewers from, you know, like, across the world, I think that was like a you know, like, back then you didn't have a Leicester City that happened. So, you know, like, you didn't expect, okay, Hull will not win the league, but okay, they are there, they will, like, it's fun, like, you know, like, to see some team defeating maybe or punching above their weight, like a lot above their weight, because back then generally the teams that got promoted would go straight back down, maybe for whatever reasons. So that is like a breath of fresh air, you know. Like, I wanted to ask you, like, staying with similar thing, like you said you always wanted to try your hand abroad. Why India? Like, how did that happen? How did India happen to you?
India happened for me because of a player that I used to play with, a guy called Trevor Morgan, who was well known in India, certainly in the Bengal area, that's for sure. He was very successful at East Bengal. And Trevor was managing the national team at Bhutan, and he wanted to get back into Indian football. He wanted to get back to domestic football instead of international football, because it wasn't taking enough of his time up. He wanted to be on the training ground every day. So he applied for the job at Pune with Gaurav Medel. And one of the criteria was that you had to have managed either in the top league in your own country or the Premier League in England. And he didn't have that criteria, he didn't fulfill that criteria. So in the interview, he actually said to Gaurav Medel, I don't fulfill that criteria, but I know somebody who has just lost his position who does fulfill that criteria. And Gaurav did his homework. Next thing you know, about a week later, I'm on a flight to Mumbai. I met with Gaurav and with all his backroom team, and myself as manager, and Trevor became my assistant, who I played with at Bolton Wanderers in the early 90s. So it was a chance comment by Trevor Morgan in an interviewing process where he wasn't getting the job, but he was thinking, well, the next best thing would be to be the assistant manager. And that's how I got the job. And when I came across to Mumbai, a lot of people in England haven't been to Mumbai. A lot of people in England know Indian people in England, but they don't know Indian people in India. And it's a totally different experience. And I was absolutely fascinated. My eyes were sort of wide open looking at this magnificent city. And then talking business, getting the job, driving 3.5 hours to Pune, meeting the players, and then the rest just became a bit of a whirlwind, to tell you the truth. But walking into that first changing room, Subhasish, when you've got 18 Indian boys and 7 foreign players, maybe 2 of them, 3 of them maybe speak English of the foreign players, but the Indian boys had a second language, and some of them could get broken English. And I tried to hit them with a couple of words, like honesty, imandari. I tried to, write these words up and let them know I'm trying to do a little bit of homework on India, and then I get told, well, that's Hindi, and there's 26, 27, 28 other languages, in India. And I was like, wow, that just blew my mind the first day. So coming abroad, yes, good challenge. Understanding the language, that was the biggest challenge, But what the boys, they body language never tells a lie. You know, body language, you know, your positive, your feelings, your energy that you come out with in a presentation, that never tells a lie. And I think the players bought into that with me because I really wanted to succeed. And then when we broke it up and tried to speak more Indian and more Hindi, and everybody bought into it, and that's the reason why we won 5 out of the 8 games and almost got into the playoffs from being bottom all season. So it was a great experience to start off with. It was a fantastic experience to start off with, and I'm still enjoying the culture in Goa now. It's the first time I've been in Goa for a while, and it's a beautiful place.
Definitely. So, we're getting to the end, and I have last few set of questions, and I wanted to ask you, how has the experience been in India? Because you have managed in the so-called maybe the most premier football league in the world, that is Premier League. During a time you have been associated there for quite a while, then other leagues in England, and coming to India, probably it will not, in terms of at least the time it has been around, it won't even be with the non-league football of England for how long it has been around, to what at least the ISL part. How has the experience been in ISL in terms of football?
In terms of football, I was you have to get the rules and regulations right in your own head. 5 foreign players, 2 on the bench. Now all of a sudden there's a new one, and the AFC kind of rule where you've got to have 4 and 1, and all of these kind of rules keep on changing for the promotion of the ISL, for the positivity of Indian football. But I've always been interested in foundations. I've always been interested in building from within, and I suggested on 2 or 3 occasions to my owners at Pune and also to my owners at Hyderabad that the break between the end of the season and the start of the next season, the break is too big. So your foundation of football is for me is how much time you have, how much contact time you have as a coach with your group of players. And that's 5 or 6 months that the Indian League is not playing. That for me is wasted time. I think that's where you need to be on the training ground, and you need contact time, and you need to develop your players. And that's from the grassroots up through to the 16s, the 18s, and then the 23s. And I think if you can get that contact time, there's some good coaches. In fact, I did the AIFF coaches conference. There was a lot of good coaches, a lot of coaches on there that are absolutely desperate to get contact time with players. So the one thing you have is commodity. You've got players, you've got plenty of players. The one thing that you don't have is the contact time of these good coaches with them players. And that has to be when the season finishes. They've got to be now better prepared for the start of the next season. And if you do that year on year, come the 22, 23, 24-year-old Indian boys, they will be technically better. They will be tactically more aware. You can't improve them in terms of fitness because they've got fantastic physiques. The body fat is conducive to an athlete. You've got people who can run all day. And I think you've got the basic commodities. Let's add to it from a technical perspective. And if you get that right, I think the ISL will absolutely be one, not just Asia, all over the world, certainly from an international perspective. The beauty is, I'm just looking at my notes, because I'm working tonight, and when I heard that you were the Bengaluru area, the podcast, is it the broadcast, the Bengaluru area? I'm looking at 3 Indian boys there, and I've actually had contact time with one of them, and that's Ashik. Well, you're looking at Udanta Chetri. Chetri's a legend, has been around for years, national team icon. Udanta, brilliant pace, and now everybody's seen how good he can be. And I had Ashik at Pune, and there was lots to work with. Left foot, he can play in a couple of positions. He had pace, he had energy. He had a smile on his face every day in training. I think that's priceless. So these things, to move the national team forward, will eventually put a marker down, maybe in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, when you get ISL 10 and you've had 10 years history of the ISL. I think eventually Indian football will be on the world stage.
Definitely. And I'll ask you two more questions or three more. And first of the three is like, you have traveled at least between UK and England and UK and India for now in terms of football management. And what is the most bizarre incident that you have ever had?
The most bizarre. Oh dear. I wish you had prepared me for this because I've got a few. Bizarre. Shoo. Can I come back to that one?
Sure.
You ask
Yeah.
another couple of questions and I'll have an idea in my head.
Sure. Okay, and then we'll move on. Like, in terms of your in terms of your coaching, is there, like, of course this is dependent on various criteria, like maybe what you have available, but what is the one formation that you would prefer playing if you had everything available according to your wish?
The best formation for me.
Yeah.
I do like two strikers. I think the modern day game eventually will get to three centre backs. So I like a 3-4. I like, so long number 10 is I had Marcelino at both clubs, and Marcelino on his day, different class, absolutely different class. If he was on his day every game, he wouldn't be in India. He'd probably be playing national team for Brazil because he had great ability, and he's still got that. And we'll see it at another club tonight. Well, not tonight, but in a few days at Odisha. But I liked having two strikers. So when we came across to Pune, I had Robin Singh, and I had Ian Hume, and I had Marcelino behind him. When I was at Preston North End, I had three different types of strikers. I had Jamie Proctor, I had Ian Hume, and I had Neil Mellor. And all three, when you get three strikers, that bring three different things to the table. If you can support that with whatever, and if it's a back four, then it has to be a midfield three. If it's a back three, then it has to be a midfield four. And what works for me is the two wing backs. And I had Ashik and Nikhil Pujari. They would run there all day long going forward, and they would run there going back because of the attitude and the mentality. And the coach was telling them, keep running there, keep running back, keep running. And I think they complemented that midfield, whether it be the two strikers in the 10 or just the midfield itself, you know. So I always remember that good moment at Pune where we almost got in the playoffs, and that was the system. I thought, if anybody ever asked me that question, which you have done, that would be my favourable system. But everybody seems to be playing 4-2-3-1. But the ones that are playing three centre-backs, and I think we witnessed it with Habas last night, and he's even now playing Jingan, Sanjeep Jingan, is now playing left-hand side of a right footer. It can work, as long as you have the right balance and the right mentality, the right type of people.
And what is the most common formation that you have come across during your time in India?
4-2-3-1. Everybody seems to want two wingers and a number 9 and a number 10 behind them. Everybody seems to be in that round peg and round holes, you know. Whereas I think the game is won outside of them pegs, outside of them holes, and the people that belong outside of them are you're just slightly different by 5 or 10 yards. It isn't rocket science. But I've always said this: I don't think systems win games of football. I think players do. And if you've got better players than the opposition, which I think will be North East's big test tonight. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Yeah, just you've got the picture's gone off.
Yeah.
I think looking at the quality of Mumbai, I think that's going to be North East's biggest challenge, trying to bottle all that quality, you know, whether it be the two strikers, whether it be the quality centre-backs, whether it be the great midfield that they've got, whether it be the fact that the Indian boys, you know, they've got the better Indian boys as well, and all of them things will be North East's biggest problem. Once you resolve one problem in an area of the pitch, something else crops up, and that's normally with the better teams. And if you don't resolve that one, that's where the goals come in, you know, and they keep on exploiting that. So I don't think it's particularly about systems, Super Zish. I think it's about players.
Definitely, and of course, like you spoke about Northeast, and they have a coach who has a lot of experience under a lot of good managers, like
Yeah,
under
for
Rafa
sure.
and a lot of people. So that he'll be interesting. At least he's been among the supporters one of the most interesting takes. At least if not for the squad, at least for him, what he brings on the table.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And definitely, so we'll end it up with one final question. And like if you had to choose one moment in your career which is of which you are the most proud of, which one would that be?
I think it would be surviving in the Premier League. Many a time with people about why not getting promotion to the Premier League, which I've done on 2 or 3 occasions. And the first time I did it as a manager, that was probably what I would say my proudest moment, because you're at Wembley, full house, full stadium, and you've actually won something. But the proving the critics wrong has always been something that drives me. It drives me to distraction at times. And we were really red hot favourites to be relegated, out of sight, when we did get promoted. And when we survived last game of the season and Newcastle United went down, we were beaten 1-0 by Manchester United, and it's a bad way to finish, but it was an overall 9-month campaign, and it was a success. End of story. I know a lot of people remember me for the half-time team talk, or they remember me for singing on a pitch after the game. But the hard work that went into that season, that was the moment at the end where it was all worthwhile. All the problems that we had, all the scars that you have from battles that you've lost maybe, but you won the war. That was the main thing. And that was probably my proudest moment, staying in the Premier League.
Definitely. And I think Alan Shearer was the manager of Newcastle when they were really...
He was.
Yeah.
He's never spoke to me since.
Yeah, I remember. I think like last 6 or 7 games he was made the manager, I guess.
He didn't quite like it, did he? And that's what I'm saying about the difference between management and media is totally different. Now he likes the media,
Definitely. So like we have come to the end, and like, do you have any piece of advice for young coaches?
Always my advice to a young coach would be true to yourself. Be true to yourself, whatever you are, whoever you are. Don't lie to yourself. Even in the face of adversity, and normally the face of adversity where coaches are concerned, you're facing maybe the sack, you're going to be out of work. That's probably the ultimate part of it. But always be true to your principles. Be true to yourself, and even if it means taking a half-time team talk onto the pitch, and you do it in the public gaze, if that's the way you feel, go ahead and do it.
Definitely. And I hope, that's something like that comes out common from coaches, like be what you do, stand for what you think, even if it means you getting the sack.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, we all get the sack, and that was something that I had to face up to. As a young coach, I had many an argument with Sam, with Peter Reid, with all the mentors in my time, and I used to stand there and say, when I become a manager, I'll never get the sack. And then when you do get the sack, they're all on the phone to you. We told you so. But you've just got to dust yourself down. You've got to pick yourself up, get up the next day, and keep on believing. Keep on believing that what you're doing is right, and trust your instincts.
Definitely. And like on that note, Phil, thank you so much for talking to me, and I wish you all the best for your media work, and hope to see you soon in the management dugout soon again. And till then, take care, stay safe. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Player-wise, it would have to be Steven Gerrard, just because, again, before he became a journalist, he was someone I just admired massively in terms of the absolute complete footballer. I think if you were trying to make a footballer in a factory, it would be Steven Gerrard, someone who, I think JV Carragher summed it up best once when he said, Steven Gerrard's biggest strength is he doesn't have any weaknesses.
The stadium. I don't see really need to do that, mainly such a big spending, but it's true that it would be a fantastic stadium. That's not bad, but you have to be careful, and mainly at this moment when we are going to face a very difficult time.